There's been mass confusion about whether non-permitted workers can have their children cared for in their home. And I know that many of you have been following my latest social media post about this matter. I want you to know that I stand by my advice, and I want to further explain to you my reasoning. On my reading of the stay-at-home directions, in-home care can continue for non-permitted workers if an arrangement is already in place. I base this advice upon a couple of clauses in the directions. Firstly, although clause 7.1L states that childminding assistance can only be provided where the parent or guardian is a permitted worker, this is then qualified by the note. Now, the note states that a person can continue to provide existing in-home childminding arrangements, but does not explicitly state that these arrangements can only be continued where the care is for the child of a permitted worker. The exact phrase permitted worker is used nowhere in this note. In contrast, others have interpreted the note as not being an exception, rather they instead contend that the note is in fact further a qualification of clause L by establishing that the permitted worker referred to in L will be prohibited from entering the new in-home care arrangements. This contrary interpretation would prevent permitted workers from engaging new childminding services and simply does not make sense. In addition to this, clause 7.1DI states a person who ordinarily resides in the restricted area may leave the premises to provide care and support to a relative or other person who has particular needs because of age. It is not specified that only the particular needs of old age are a permitted reason. The natural inference is therefore that leaving one's residence to care for the acute needs of a toddler is as much a valid reason as caring for the acute needs of an elderly person. It's these stay-at-home directions that actually matter, regardless of what the Premier says in a media conference or via a statement from his office. It's the directions that carry the weight of law, and it's those directions that Victoria Police will be enforcing. To defeat my interpretation, the Victorian Chief Health Officer will need to explicitly change the identified clauses and note. Again, this is because only the wording of the directions themselves hold the weight of law. You elected me to represent you, to advocate for you, and to fight for you and your family's interests, and that's exactly what I'm doing. It's my job to support you and to ensure, as best I can, that every family gets through this pandemic with the necessary help that they need. That's what I'm fighting for the mums and dads who are not classified as permitted workers and have been left with nowhere to go. That's why I'm fighting for the single parent who is now having to choose between caring for their kids or putting food on the table. Hundreds of parents across Victoria have called my office on the verge of breakdown, many of them in tears. I'm not going to roll over on this one and accept what Daniel Andrews has said and allow it to go unchecked. Daniel Andrews and his office cannot just make up the law as they go. That's not how things work. If the Premier wants to change the law, then the Chief Health Officer must put these changes in writing and update the stay-at-home directions to make them explicit. And until that time, I remain resolute in advising you that in-home care for non-permitted workers is in fact allowable under the current stay-at-home directions. Now, any change to this arrangement would have widespread consequences and have a devastating impact on thousands of families across our state.